Most of you will know him from his role as CEO of Liverpool. He currently also works with a variety of other clubs, such as Wrexham, such as Wisła Kraków. He's got his own club in the US as well. And we're going to talk about his journey working in technology, working in football, how those two worlds have collided. He learned a lot about the technology side of the landscape as well when he worked with EA Sports and with Xbox as well. I could continue to give you his CV, but I think it's better if we hear from him, and I'm really looking forward to it. So please welcome for our first session at World Football Summit Madrid 2025, Peter Moore. So, I was giving a little bit of a snapshot of what your career has been like. We're going to go through some of your stages and key learnings. Before we get into your path overall, I'd love to get your insight on why you decided to work in football. What was it that was a calling for you? Because I know you've been passionate about the game, and you've written about that, you've spoken about that, you've been passionate about the game growing up. When did you make the decision that I have to work in this industry?
Well, probably when I was 4 years of age, and my dad took me to Anfield
That's an early decision.
To watch Liverpool play Leyton Orient and beat them 4-3. Liverpool was a mediocre second division team. A month later, a guy called Bill Shankly is put in charge of Liverpool, and the rest of, they say, Pedro, is history. And I've been involved in the game personally and professionally since that moment. PE teacher, obviously involved in selling soccer shoes out of the trunk of my car, starting my life there. Patrick, not many people remember Patrick football boots anymore. It's sad.
Oh, I remember them.
Oh, yeah.
In the 80s, yeah.
Yeah. And Reebok, and then on into video games and getting involved with a little game formerly known as FIFA.
Yeah.
Now it's EA Sports FC. We can talk about EA in the news as well. But the game has always been so good to me. Liverpool Football Club has always been part of my life growing up, born and bred in Liverpool. And the impact of what the game does then, and perhaps even more importantly now, in a world that is fractured and technology is separating us and politics are tearing us apart and borders are closing on us. I always think if there's one thing we can all agree on, that we love watching 22 players run around chasing a ball. We may not agree on the team we like, but from that perspective, in the world, football plays a huge part of society, stabilization, feeling good about each other, and it's always been an important part of my life.
You mentioned EA Sports, and you were very much at the center of some of the big deals that were signed by the company with the Premier League, for example. How much did you learn about the football landscape whilst you were still on the other side, and how much did that prepare you for your future roles working with clubs like Liverpool?
Yeah, I ran Xbox in Seattle and got out of the reign of Seattle and came back to San Francisco to be president of EA Sports, and that was 2007. And it was at a period where the internet was starting to really drive video games. I joined video games as president of Sega in 1998, the Sega Dreamcast, the first online console, albeit through dial-up modem. But we were exploding, and the FIFA game, I realized, was going to be the tip of the spear for the way that we at EA globalize our business. And then secondly, and FIFA executives at this time and today will still say, we were one of the better things that was coming out of the four letters FIFA at that time. Hundreds of millions of people in the end interacting with football, learning about the individual players, leagues, clubs, federations through the FIFA game. And I take great pride in what my team was able to do to be able to bring to life the game to nearly 200 countries where the game was distributed.
You take over at Liverpool in 2017.
Yeah.
What was your initial mandate, and what did you identify as your first priorities?
Well, it was an interesting time. My job description was maybe a paragraph, and it was run the business of the football club. And I'd come out of Silicon Valley. I was then the chief operating officer of Electronic Arts, and made this not easy but not hard decision to go back to Liverpool, having left Liverpool 50 years prior, to go back to the city of my birth and run a football club. I'd never run a football club in my life before, but I felt I knew, certainly knew what the city and the club was about. But the interesting thing was, it was when football was going through this organization evolution of the sporting director coming in place, and we were so blessed to have a brilliant sporting director in Michael Edwards. Fenway Sports Group obviously did and still owns Liverpool Football Club, and it was an ownership group that truly understood sports. Boston Red Sox, more recently the Pittsburgh Penguins of the NHL. Also the verticalization of the business model. They owned and own the majority share of New England Sports Network, so not only the Red Sox, but the broadcast. But for me in the end, and it was more as I left, I realized football was about four things for me. And as CEO of the biggest club in the world, it was about community first and foremost. I mean, what the club means to people. I coined a phrase, local heart, global pulse, because that's what Liverpool was and is. Civic relationships. I realized how important we were to the city of Liverpool, to Merseyside, to England, and driving revenue. And yes, we're a local football club, but the global fan base that was coming in every home game was driving revenue. Culture. Liverpool had and has 800 employees that don't kick a ball for the club. And I needed to drive a culture that was built on the Liverpool way, that goes all the way back to Bill Shankly, of how we operate, how we speak to our fans, and then how we build a club that we can be proud of, and build a self-sustaining business model in a world then where all kinds of different business models of football clubs were emerging. And then finally, commercial, whether we liked it or not. We were languishing behind the Manchester Uniteds, the Real Madrids, the Barcelonas, and we knew we needed, on top of the success of the virtuous cycle that is football, win games, make more money through sponsorships, get better merit payments from media, buy better players. FSG has never taken a penny out of that football club, and every penny that had been made through all of those factors has been reinvested to an Alisson Becker, a Virgil van Dijk, and Mohamed Salah, Bobby Firmino, Sadio Mane, I could go on and on. So everything goes back on the pitch. That is the virtuous cycle of football.
You had some tremendous talent on the pitch. You mentioned quite a few names, and Mo Salah is still lighting it up, and he did last season, especially as Liverpool won the title again. How important was it for you to balance your involvement of what happened on the pitch and through Jurgen Klopp, of course?
Yeah.
How many conversations did you have with him about your plans, and then how much was it teamwork as well with Michael Edwards and the technical side of the club? How did you balance that and everything that you wanted to achieve?
We had very clear swim lanes. I ran the business of Liverpool Football Club. I would see Jurgen on game days pretty much. I never, rarely went to Melwood, the training ground at that time. Michael was focused as the sporting director on all sporting operations, and my job was to run the club outside of that. I was a football CEO that really had nothing to do with football. I mean, that sounds weird, but as regards, nobody's going to tell Jurgen Klopp how to run the team, and I was very clear on that. Michael knew that he was tasked with building a squad that a manager, a world-class manager of the level and caliber of Jurgen Klopp could mold and get to where it needed to be, not only to win the Premier League for the first time ever, but also to build a European team. And sometimes those are two different squads. And of course, Champions League final in Kiev, going down to Real Madrid, but then the following year, right here in Madrid and Tottenham Hotspur. And then Billy Hogan, who is my successor now as the CEO of Liverpool, came out of the Fenway Sports management team, an American that came over to England and was really focused on driving that commercial revenue, getting the shirt sponsorship right, making sure that we were driving sponsorships, advertisers that were a global quality. Even when I arrived, we still had regional and local sponsors, and that changed radically. Again, it's this virtuous cycle of football. Better players win more games, bigger sponsors come in, write bigger checks. You get better players.
You mentioned the Premier League and the Champions League. Obviously, it helps from a commercial standpoint as well when you win big competitions like that. What was your achievement there that you're most proud of, besides the sporting side of it, because your tenure will be marked by those titles. And when you talk about the Premier League, I mean, I grew up in the 80s. Liverpool was one of my favorite teams growing up in Portugal because of the success they had, right? But then there was a big period, especially in England, where there was no success. So we know about that, and your hand obviously had a hand to play in that. But what are you most proud of that you achieved at Anfield?
It's going to be a strange answer to you. When I go to Liverpool, which I was this weekend, people will stop me in the street that still remember me, and they did. And you'd think, to your point, they'd say, oh, we won the Champions League when you were there. We won the Premier League when you were there. No, they stop me, and the verbatim is usually, you made me feel closer to the club. I engaged with the fans. I took the risk of being on Twitter, which pretty much was very controversial with my owners. And they weren't big fans of fan engagement, to say the least. But I would engage. I had learned this at EA, to put a human face on this massive video game publisher that seemed cold and distant to gamers. And I jumped on social media and I started engaging and having conversations. And I did the same at Liverpool. And I think at that point I was the only Premier League CEO at Liverpool. But I'm a Scouser. I'm from Liverpool. We're warm. We're a little overconfident. We're a bit cocky. We have a lot to say for ourselves. And I felt we had absentee owners living 2,500 miles away in Boston, Massachusetts, that maybe came a couple of times a year, phenomenal owners, but not present in a working class city that demanded engagement, demanded answers. And remember, we're a city, a socialist city, coming out of a very difficult American ownership group called Tom Hicks and George Gillette, who were fundamentally run out of town. And there's still the little cobwebs of that were still hanging around. So I lived in Liverpool. I walked the streets of Liverpool. People engaged with me as I walked the streets and gave me their opinions. I felt I needed to engage with the fans, talk to them about the football club. And one of the things I also did, even here in Madrid, wherever I would go, either on holiday with my wife or professionally, I would find out where the OLSC, the official Liverpool supporters club was, of which there are 350 around the world official. It's usually some dingy pub somewhere. It's a great place here in Madrid. And I would say, I'm coming into town, I've got a presentation, invite whomever, we'll have a few beers and I'll talk about the football club. And I did that in 16, 17 different cities around the world.
That makes a difference because you're actually interacting with the community.
Totally. But you're also getting feedback. And you're getting feedback of, like, what's wrong? And we can't buy kit, or why can't I get a ticket to Anfield? Or the club doesn't engage in the right way with me. And so that feedback you can't see in spreadsheets, you can't see in focus groups. If I'm sat there for 3 hours, which I was, and I'm doing something like this on a stage and talking with the screen behind me, and then take an hour of questions, and usually about 3 or 4 pints in, everybody's tongues is loosened.
No kidding.
But that feedback is visceral, it's real, it's directly from the fans' mouth, and I took so much of that back to Liverpool with me.
I'm sure there's so many stories from Liverpool, and many of them are surely in your book, of course, which you've launched recently, Game Changer. I'm sure you're proud of that, and your career path, and everything that you learned, not only from your previous life, working for EA Sports, for Xbox, for Liverpool, you're now taking as expertise to various different places. One of those is Wrexham Football Club, which is a phenomenal project. I'm watching the documentary, Welcome to Wrexham, and I'm watching it. You mentioned it, community, and you say, okay, a lot of people watch it because Ryan and Rob are involved, right? 2 Hollywood celebrities. But I think that might be why people get in, but that's not why they stay.
That's correct.
The community stories there are amazing. And you learn so much about the personal stories of players, of fans, of the directors, and that's really why football is so special. When you decided to join Wrexham, tell me about that process, and then what exactly you try to share with them and to guide with them.
So I was born and bred in Liverpool. My dad owned a pub, but when I was 10 years of age, Liverpool in the 60s was a tough place to live. I love it to death, but in the 60s was difficult. My dad always would say wanted his name over the door, which in England, you're the licensee of the pub, and your name is painted over the door, and he always wanted that.
Okay.
We got a pub in Wrexham, and so I moved to Wrexham. I was a decent player. I played for Wrexham schoolboys. I was right fullback, a player. Some of you might remember Joey Jones was left fullback, played for Liverpool, played for Chelsea afterwards. Sadly, just recently passed away last month, and it leaves a big hole in Wrexham. But and so I grew up in Wrexham, played at the racecourse many times. Fast forward 40-odd years, come back from Liverpool. My wife and I moved to Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
Within a week, Rob McElhaney is knocking on the door at our house in Santa Barbara and sits down with me. He's trying to lure me back to Wrexham. My wife had put up with 4 years of British weather. It wasn't going to happen. But I said, I'll help you, Rob. And I explained, I sat down and talked about Wrexham and talked about the industry of coal mining and steel that is gone, and a wonderful North Wales town. And many of you watched the documentary series. But the team had fallen into disarray. It was owned by a supporters trust. It was owned by the fans to keep it alive. And this is the oldest stadium in the world that still hosts international. And it's the third oldest football club in the world. So the tragedy was, you know, fans had moved on. You're only 30 miles from Liverpool. You're a Liverpool fan. You're an Everton fan. You're a Manchester United, Man City fan. Right. As you know, you can throw a stone and you've got a professional football club in England. So I helped Rob think through. I became an advisor. And one of the things that I did a ton of interviews because there was great skepticism. Hollywood types coming in, Ryan Reynolds, Rob McElhaney. They're going to clean up the club. They're going to do a documentary. They're going to cash in and move on. Nothing could be further from the truth, as we have seen. They love it. They fell in love with the people, with the town, now city of Wrexham, with North Wales, and they fell in love with Liverpool. Rob explained to me that during the height of COVID, he turns Netflix on. He and his sons are big FIFA players in esports, and that's how he got to know me. And he said, I turned on this documentary called Sunderland Till I Die. He had no idea where Sunderland was. He starts watching it, and he sees the emotion and the pain of a wonderful city, a shipbuilding city that was in economic disarray, and all they had left were the Black Cats Sunderland Football Club. Huge club, beautiful stadium, relegated. And so the morale and the spirit of the city was getting dragged down as the club was getting relegated. And so, if you've I don't know if you've watched Sunderland Till I Die, but it is a spectacular documentary. I have not watched that one yet. And it's a very similar structure to Welcome to Wrexham, in that you're in the pub and you're talking to grandmothers and grandfathers who remember the club 60, 70 years ago when it was FA Cup winners and just amazing. And he said he'd never met Ryan Reynolds. And he just pinged Ryan and said, we're buying a football club. And Ryan goes, okay, why? To do good, to help. And Wrexham was, they looked at a number of clubs, and Wrexham was the very fortunate beneficiary. So my job, I got Wrexham in the FIFA game, did a lot of interviews with the BBC, and I remember Financial Times, because I believed them, and then helped them get going, and then I would fly over to Wrexham and go watch the games. And the club right now, and they've invested heavily, as you know, you get to the championship, it's not the conference that they were in 3 years ago, and the first ever club in British football to go back to back promotions.
I wanted to talk specifically about how fast the journey has been. Is there a risk of it having been too fast? Because, as you said, it's the first time in history that it's happened, and there's so much that needs to change around the team, not just about the players, but the structure, right?
Yeah.
So I guess in that process, you've been a key ally in helping to grow and how to grow.
Yeah, I mean, there is a risk in that you've got to keep up financially. The stadium is too small. Right now,
the capacity is?
Well, right now it's about 12,000.
Okay.
And look, Bournemouth played for years in the Premier League with a 12,000. But if you're going to keep up, as we talked, economically and financially, your game day revenues are critical. 12,000 doesn't cut it. They're building a brand new stand, 7,500 seater stand behind what they call the Cop End. But that will be next season. So you've got to keep your stadium, your structure, your staff. My executive assistant at Liverpool Football Club, Tina Roberts, is now the chief of staff at Wrexham. And a brilliant woman, but when I talk to her, it's like our heads exploding every day because, to your point, you're now playing Leicester City, you're playing Southampton.
Yeah.
You know, you were playing Dagenham and Redmond and Gillingham. And Ryan and Rob, you can see the players they're buying. They are clearly writing the checks for it. But there's got to be a stabilization, I think.
It's sustainable, right? It needs to be sustainable.
Yeah, and I think at some point, and I think it'll be this season, you take a breath, right? And we did it at Liverpool, where you have to have your infrastructure, your stadium, your match day revenues, your training ground. It needs to catch up with the quality of the play on the field. And we had the same thing at Liverpool. We built the new main stand. We moved away from Melwood, our training ground, and built a brand new training center in Kirkby. We've been at Melwood for 70 years. So you have to build infrastructure that supports success. And then that can be the infrastructure that can be the building block of the next level. Because the next level is the Premier League. Whole different story.
So Liverpool makes sense. Wrexham makes sense. Wisła, Kraków.
Good pronunciation. Well done.
Yeah? A few years at UEFA, so
yeah, there you go.
Traveling to Poland. That doesn't make sense from an outsider's point of view. So I wanted you to tell us why you joined that project, member of the board, ownership group as well.
Yes.
So what are you aiming to achieve there?
The weird and wonderful world of football. I help in my video game past. I help now. As you get older, you have an obligation to help those that helped you along the way. And video games have been very good to me. So there are a lot of young developers around the world who are building games, either mobile or console. So a young man in Kraków had reached out to me a couple of years ago, and he's building a game. Said, "Can you help me think through? I've got monopoly intellectual property." I said, "Good, but I need to build a game." So he said, "Come on out, sit down, help me with the developers, help me with investors." So what a beautiful city, first of all.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Oh, there's somebody that wants to meet you. He owns Wisła Kraków, which is a League One team, but an unbelievably historic, wonderful football club that is about to be 120 years old. And he's in his late 30s. He works in artificial intelligence, and he is a force of nature, Jaroslav Królewski." And so I go meet Jaroslav, never met him before. Walk around the stadium, and I do what I do. I say, "Jaroslav, you thought about this, and let's think about these executive suites driving more revenue, and look at the pitch. You can put, sponsor logos on there." Next thing I know, I own 5% of the club.
Great salesman, I guess.
But I love it, and I've gone out there. Debbie, my wife, and I went out there for a full week. What an amazing football club! And it's not just the men's team playing in front of 33,000 every single week. They're top of League One. They will get promoted to Ekstraklasa, which is the next step.
Yeah.
We had the most amazing football experience on a Saturday morning. Somebody said, "Come watch the blind team play." And I don't know if anybody's stood and watched and listened to blind football. They're the Polish champions. If they won that game, they were going to be Polish champions again. And this game of ours is so amazing. These people are blind. They actually wear blindfolds because some maybe have 1% vision. And so it makes it, and the ball has a bell in it.
Yep.
And the faster the ball moves, they can discern where it's going.
Yep.
It's got walls, so they literally bounce off the walls to get a sense of where they are on the pitch. The goalkeepers, which is very smart, are sighted. So they add a sense of structure, and they can shout out instructions. But people who are, so physically disadvantaged that they can't see, but love football. And I could have stayed there all day watching. Talk about physical, because if you're running full blast and you don't know where anybody else is, the only frame of reference they got is that bell in that ball, and I loved it. On top of that, and we didn't have a chance to go, they're the amputee champions of Poland. You've probably seen it, guys on crutches, girls on crutches that are playing. And it just shows you, if you love the game, no matter what your physical disability or disadvantage, you want to play football. And this football club at Wisła, they embrace all of this. Look, I think we're going to get promoted. But more importantly, it serves the community. Yeah. This is a club that played throughout World War II with the permission of the Nazi invaders to keep the morale of Kraków going. Soviets come in, they still play. and it's an amazing football club. But it just shows you what our game can do to lift the spirits, for morale. It's a bit crazy in there, and UEFA, who you know very well, doesn't like flares. It's unbelievable on game day. And they tell me the story of the ultras, who apparently are all doctors, dentists, and lawyers. You know, you think ultra, yeah.
Right.
Come in with the check on Thursday for UEFA because they know that they're going to let off flares on Sunday. So they prepay the fines for the club. I absolutely love it, but it just shows you the power of what our game can do for a city that have been through so much. But football was always there for them.
I didn't want to finish our conversation without speaking about Santa Barbara and your project there in the USL. So we all know that the US is going to be very much at the center of attention when it comes to football over the next year. We're in countdown to the World Cup. Obviously, you founded Santa Barbara. Tell us about that project and what you aim to achieve there.
Well, so the structure in the US, you're probably all familiar with MLS, which has got a more of a traditional American sports structure of franchise. It's called a franchise rather than the club in most instances, but it's a single entity corporation, so the league has tremendous control over player contracts. And so what USL is, it sits that league below. And without in any way criticizing MLS, USL is a proper football league, to the extent that 2 years from now, it will be the first ever American sports league that will feature promotion and relegation. They are doing this because it's true. You build a club, and Santa Barbara Sky. So I come back from Liverpool. USL executives realized that the former CEO of Liverpool is now residing in a market they desperately want. If you think where Santa Barbara is on the West Coast, LA, San Francisco, we sit in that central coast. So I famously said to them, look, I'm already working full time again. I'll be an engaged minority owner. Well, Pedro, 2 months later, I'm designing logos. I am building a brand.
Great logo, by the way. Amazing.
It is the terracotta of the Spanish architecture of Santa Barbara. Okay. That is St. Barbara. We've given her a kind of Statue of Liberty makeover a little bit. 3rd century Christian martyr, of which the city is named. And I just thought Sky was a great name, and the logo. Our merchandise sales are already through the roof.
Yeah?
Kicked the ball. Oh, yeah.
Because you're only starting in 2027.
27,
right?
Yeah. And we continue to sell merchandise, season tickets. It's a wonderful, wonderful city.
Where will you play?
University of California, Santa Barbara, 17,000-seater soccer-specific stadium.
Wow.
The great thing about Santa Barbara, American football, which I love, but hasn't been played there for 30 years. The university said, we're going to play soccer, we're going to play basketball. And it's a soccer powerhouse. And so the stadium has been built with the stands to the touchlines, natural grass, top-of-the-line pitch. Wrexham played Bournemouth last summer. We put a new pitch in for that. And so this is truly a soccer community, powerful youth soccer program, 50% white, 50% Hispanic demographic, deep Hispanic roots, and we're going to engage all demographics here. The game, we're very confident that we're going to have a top-class team there. So that's in my spare time doing that as well. So,
what spare time?
Yeah. And Debbie, my wife, is the executive. What was very important, the moment we founded the club, we also founded a 501c3, which is a charity in the United States, Fundación Cielo, to serve the community through the power of football. Yeah. That was as important as forming the club. And so things like food banks, which I learned very much so in Liverpool, are unfortunately required, already helping the community again before we kick a ball.
Final question. What is your key learning from your career so far that you can share with many of us that have a great opportunity to learn from someone who's basically seen it all, done it all?
Yeah, I think, look, we all love football, and we all love what the game is all about. And we're all in the business of football. And oftentimes the KPIs, the key performance indicators, how much revenue we're driving, let's manage these operating expenses. Football without fans is nothing. That's a banner that sits at Liverpool on the Kop. Underneath it sits a banner that says unity is strength. And so let's not forget what this game is all about. Sure, it's about pounds, dollars, euros. It's about huge transfer fees. It's about driving your Champions League games to win. So UEFA writes you that check every day, which they literally do, and it lands in your account. But it's about the people. It lifts the people. We talk about football is yes, it's about lifting trophies, but it's also about lifting people. And that's what the game really, really is all about. From this lad from Liverpool in post-war Britain in the 50s, walking into Anfield, smelling it, hearing words I'd never heard before, shouted very loudly. I can still smell the wintergreen liniment that the players would rub on their legs. Wow. And I was hooked. And the game has been so good to me. I'm at that point in my life where I can give, I'm very fortunate that my wife and I can give back to the game. And let's never forget what that's all about. We're all involved here in the business of the game, but let's not forget the people behind it that stand on the terraces, that shout, that have done it for 50, 60, 70 years, that have did what my dad did to me. Thank God he made me a red, not a blue in Liverpool, and passed it down, right? And so passed it down so that generations could enjoy the joys, the victories, the losses, and everything that this game means to us.
Look, I think it's I would think it's fair I speak for everyone when I say it's a pleasure, a privilege to have you here, to listen to you, and take away some of the insight that you had to share. So thank you so much. Of course, the book is out, Game Changer. Yeah. If you want more of these stories, more expertise, you can pick that up wherever possible. And Peter, fantastic to have you here.
Thank
Ladies
you,
and gentlemen, Peter Moore.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend.
Great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.